Annihilation Barges and Catacomb Command Barges. The sleep, the great slumber. It did its work, but it had its price. The fee, senility, insanity. Some know how they have altered, how they have changed. Not all, that is for certain. But thankfully we are one of these, just sane enough to know how insane we are. For we do not hear our voice as it is, as it has been for eons uncounted. After the sleep, we do not hear the metallic bark of our words, the artificial stimulation of airwaves to create a method of communication. We do not hear the synthetic sound of the speaker as it comes from within us, the echo of the tomb which is the eternal yet unliving vehicle for our mind, yet not our soul, for that is long gone. We are mad, and we know it, because we hear our voice of old, our voice of the flesh, the voice of our now dead and decomposed body. We hear our old voice, our sacred words which were once law, even as we order the attack. The pitiful things in front of us are almost an affront to our senses, an insult to be on the same field as the likes of them. We, Sakeh-Ha, resplendent lord of Tanish, scourge of the Knib, saviour of the Balmat stars, defiler of the last sanctum, and on, and on. Our grandeur is not forged in names, nor truly described by them. They are more fixed points in our history, the filigree that neither enhances nor detracts from the art it surrounds. They do not define us. They are not us. Merely things we have done. Once we held stock in such things, when they had a purpose. But now there is none. None but the salving of our troubled yet diminished ego. We know there was a time we would have rather died than bend the knee, for we were Sakeh-Ha, Pharaoh of all that we saw. Our word was law, our desires met before we even knew of their rousing. We were Sakeh-Ha, the great grandson of a triarch. Greatness was not only our birthright, but our destiny. Yet now we are nothing more than a lesser lord in a greater court. We ancient things awoke from slumber, ready to take back our galaxy, but the slumber had achieved its goals. The Roshana Knib now shadows of their might, barely surviving in hidden cells and nomadic tribes lurching across the stars without purpose. The Eldari, now a pitiful guttering candle, their light almost extinguished. Laughable. The Krork are numerous, but have devolved to the point of being a pest, a nuisance only. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. For we remember their power, their might. We faced them then, battling across the stars, the sands, the void between. They were so impressive for their age. Weapons of the old ones, who are now gone. Of course we remember that. One of our many, many honors is keyed to that time, that event. We were in the vanguard in that last battle, the only one of many a Pharaoh who stood that day, when we ended it. But to see what they have all become, it is akin to looking in a cracked mirror. For despite their pitiful existences, the ones who we went into slumber to avoid, are we any different? We have fallen so far from what we were, all of us. Most of our people are mere automata. Ruling such as them is no honor. We simply point and our will is enacted. But there is never a trial, never true devotion, no resistance or hesitation, never a question of if the order should be performed, then the realization that it has been issued by a Pharaon, so must be performed. There is nothing. No honor, no glory, no subservience, no surrender to our splendor. They simply do what they are told because they cannot do otherwise. Like a tool lifted and cast down, they fall as they are ordered, as our people are without thought, without agency, without purpose, without soul. To lead the soulless is a soulless task, and thus all of the past washes away. The reality of the present comes to me, despite it being in a voice, an inner dialogue that has not been reflective of our reality or relevant to our existence from millennia before even our slumber. Are we really more than a shadow of our imperfection that was yet godlike? Our form twisted and broken, but our will and soul blazing like a star. Now the star has gone cold, and then the names and honors and drive remain. Our drive to be as we once were. But this cannot happen until we have become overlords of all again. So I perform my duties. We who once ordered the galaxy to our will, now cull and direct in the name of others. But why the maudlin memories? Why the bemoaning of senescence? This moment, more than any, brings it into stark relief. For once we adored this moment, the pomp, the elation, the glory of it all, the revealing of our splendor to our men. We stand atop our command barge, our chariot of the gods, and we slowly ascend to a point where we can see the entire field. Sensors and chevrons have their use, but the Nemesis or Pharaon who relies on them alone is a fool. And we, Sakeha, are no fool or incompetent. But once, we would ascend and our ears would be filled with the echoes of our name, bellowed from each and every throat below. We will strode the skies so that our men could see we were with them, leading them, directing and protecting them. A star in the skies that heralded oncoming victory. Of course, this is of no import anymore. We hear no chanting of our name, no stomping of feet, no bashing of weapons on shields from our Lich Guard, no rousing cries, no imploring mothers wishing their sons to be saved by our good graces, no wives wailing for the love they see standing in our mighty ranks of men unending. They all stand motionless. Our agency is the only thing that will move them now. Our will is the only one left. And so we exercise it. We hear our old voice command the attack. Attack! Our forces array, their flanks covered. The enemy brought to this place through the most base of artifice. Endless tides of them. Where once this would have filled me with dread, or an overwhelming urge to best them, just to prove we were better. Now we are here because we are instructed to be. We, Sakeha, are reduced to acting as Nemesis to a greater Pharaon. It is a stepping stone to the hope of one day being reborn. We do it because we have no choice. We must prove our worth. The Orcs charge as intended. It is rumoured that the greatest Nemesis, now Pharaon, Imhotep, has difficulty with the Green Ones. It is probably their erratic nature, their almost childish glee, and subsequent approach to war that has him so confused. Always awaiting a stroke of genius, a lever of cunning that is simply no longer there. he overthinks his battles against them. For the orcs are not Krork. If we were facing Krork this day, I would have brought thrice or more the numbers. But the Krork are gone. Only these wretched parodies remain. So I will destroy them. We have arranged the field, the placement of all. We have arranged the invitation. Orcs run after our tomb blades, as expected. We have them. They charge into the valley, with their usual mixture of boundless exuberance and feral aggression. It begins. They charge, so many of them. They directly slam into our front lines. After many a death, I can assure you. But still they come on. I have the front lines buckled in 2 places. The orcs immediately push through like a tidal wave, finding a chink to flow through. And at this I hem them in with my Lich Guard and Immortals to their fore. They will not get through. And on either side my fleets of Annihilation Barges begin their slow advance. Searing beams of lightning crash into the orc front line, evaporating it. But the energies do not stop there. Worms and tentacles of power jump from one of the orc greenskins to those behind. An ever-increasing spiderweb of destruction. And as my barges continuously fire, the web becomes larger and larger, until eventually it seems half of the field is filled with juddering and atomizing orcs. I take a more elevated position to bask in the fruits of my labor. The orcs then begin to run. It is a sight I thought I would never see, looking at them as Krork, not as the pale shadow that they are. But the orcs run and run. Trying to escape the tendrils of destruction, my barges lay over them like a net. They are too late. I close the only path of egress with squadrons of Nightsides. They crisscross the air and drop off their cargo of warriors with their invasion beams, rank upon rank of them materializing and then firing into the trapped orcs. And for a fleeting moment, I come as close to a feeling of satisfaction that is now possible for one who has no soul. Welcome, gentle listener. I am Baldermort, your faithful servant, and I wish to introduce you to the forces, factions, and important units of the Warhammer 40k universe, the grim darkness of the far future, where there is no time for peace, there is only time for war. And today, we are to discuss one of the most visually stunning weapons used in the setting, and one of the most important vehicles that uses it. Of course, I speak of the Tesla weapon and the Annihilation Barge which houses it. But also, we shall be discussing the Catacomb Command Barge. Logical, as they come from the same model box. And so, as usual, for the very basics, let us lean on existing wisdom. To quote, Annihilation Barges. Annihilation Barges are powerful anti-infantry support platforms. Each is armed with a linked pair of Tesla destructors, enormous energy cannons that fire ferocious arcs of eldritch lightning. In their usual configuration, Annihilation Barges are set in fixed positions in the lowest and deepest sanctums of a Necron tomb. Should a group of intruders manage to circumvent the layers of traps, service robots and prowling canoptic constructs, they will pass beneath the concealed emplacements in which the Annihilation Barges lie. An acrid discharge of emerald lightning later, and the interlopers are naught but dust upon the tomb's stale breezes. When a Necron Overlord goes to war, the Annihilation Barge's ancient repulsor sleds are coaxed back into life, and the vehicles add their firepower to the Tomb World's army. They are especially popular amongst the forces of the Mefrit dynasty. Obsessed with obliterating the living, Their phalanxes are keyed towards maximum destruction of enemy infantrymen, and the beasts of war they sometimes go to the front line. Annihilation barges are seldom swift enough to keep pace with even the ponderous advance of the Necron army, and so they are often deployed as defenses for strategic locations. From here, they can counter enemy scout elements without facing the risk of being swept aside by a concerted attack. Not only does this render valuable sectors of the battlefield immune to all but the most determined of enemy assaults, it ensures that the Annihilation barges themselves are guaranteed to find bloody purpose. Additionally, most Overlords task a squad of Immortals or Necron warriors as guards. Such a partnership can prove advantageous for both parties. The Annihilation barge has a screen of allies to drive back incoming assaults, whilst its bodyguard benefits from the massive firepower. The Annihilation barge's Tesla destructors are primarily anti-personnel weapons, though only the most heavily armoured tanks can risk their wrath with utter impunity. The Tesla destructor employs much the same lightning arc technology as found in the smaller Tesla cannons and carbines. Its energy discharges wreak terrible harm on living targets, searing their flesh and boiling their blood. Furthermore, the bolts will often leap from target to target before they are finally grounded, leaving a trail of smouldering carnage across a broad swathe of the battlefield. Nowhere are Annihilation barges more commonly employed than on the northern frontier planets of the Akanazad dynasty. These toon worlds are under perpetual assault from the Orcs of Charadon, to whom the technology-rich and highly ordered Necron planets present an irresistible lure, both in terms of plunder and anarchic potential. Without the protection of Annihilation barges, many of these worlds would have long ago been overrun. Few weapons other than the Tesla destructor can wreak such efficient havoc amongst an oncoming Orc horde. The blast is powerful enough to shred the armor of trucks and looted wagons, and when fired upon Orc boys, lightning arcs wildly from one victim to the next, reducing flesh to ash. Catacomb Command Barges. The most aggressive Necron overlords fight not on foot, but rather from the deck of a Catacomb Command Barge, an armoured repulsor-driven skimmer. In ancient times, this craft would hover high above the army, so that all Necron tier could see their overlord's presence and take heart from it. Most overlords can no longer directly inspire the soldiery as once they could. Few Necrons any longer have the capacity to process such emotions. But technology has filled the void. The Catacomb Command Barge is nothing less than a giant carrier wave generator that allows an overlord to instantaneously issue commands to nearby troops. Even now, when inspiration has little to do with visibility, an overlord will often seek a raised vantage point at battle's start, so he might better divine the enemy's intended strategy before it unfolds. The Catacomb Command Barge itself is a swift and maneuverable craft. It has to be, for an overlord must keep pace with the conflict at all times. Though the overlord is undeniably the command barge's master, he does not operate its controls. Such work is beneath nobility, and especially below those of such esteemed rank as his own. The craft's controls are the charge of the 2 slave Necron crew, who act both as its pilots and its gunners for its underslung weaponry. These Necrons are hardwired to the Overlord through the craft, and can react to his instructions in a fraction of a second. This does not, however, prevent the Overlord from issuing verbal commands. Old habits die hard in some old soldiers. Indeed, it is often possible to hear the Overlord's authoritative instructions or angry epithets echoing across a battlefield, as he drives his crew hard up to, and sometimes beyond, their limits. Service aboard a command barge is considered to be a great honor, though it is not without its risks. Not only does it guarantee a place in the very heart of the battle, but if the Overlord is slain, or sometimes even if he is merely put to inconvenience through mechanical error, retribution falls upon his pilots. With his Barges systems attended to by his minions, the Overlord is free to wield his own weapons against the foe. Sometimes he will stand proud on the prow of his vehicle, swinging his blade at close quarters into the ranks of his enemies. At others, however, the Overlord will remain seated in his throne, choosing instead to unleash crackling bolts of energy as the Catacomb command barge screams past. The last sight of many an enemy has been that of a Catacomb command barge swooping out of the sky, the Overlord's energy-bladed weapon gleaming as it swings around in a decapitating arc. End quote. Ah, the Necrons. What a wonderful army they have become. Always having a strong and striking imagery. The days of being a rip-off from the Terminator are long gone. Some may decry the strange, others bask in it. I am one of the latter, of course. My own Necron army coming on nicely, if intensely slowly. Now the command barge is a wonder to see, and the perfect conveyance for the haughty Necron Nemesaur, Lord Overlord, or even Pharaon. It is a crying shame there is not more art surrounding this vehicle, as it certainly does feed my imagination. Now the Annihilation Barge is far less imposing than the Doomsday Arc, but to line infantry, it can be a horror. I can attest to this myself, as it has fried many a wee point he have placed in their firing solution. On a lucky day, they can wreak havoc. And it is also concerning the armament they use, the Tesla weapon. Now I will always be struck with the imagery from Raiders of the Lost Ark. The lightning fields jumping from one person to another when the baddies open the Ark of the Covenant, of course. When I play against Necrons, I always like to squint a little and look at the board and imagine the crashing tendrils of lightning jumping from one to another, leaving them all as practical piles of smoking dust. And now that I have some of my own, well, I look forward to squinting and seeing other people's men turn into piles of dust. Deliciously nasty. I have been Baldermort, your faithful servant. Hope you've enjoyed this brief introduction to Catacomb Command Barges and Annihilation Barges. If so, then please do consider liking and subscribing. If you do, then hit the notifications button, as I would not want you to miss out. If you see the worth in what we are doing, then do also consider joining our Patreon, or giving the video a share if that is beyond your present scope. It would be a great boon. Now, no matter what you do today, do try to make some time for fun. Toodaloo.